Hey guys, it was so nice to hear from so many of you recently, and I just want to do this video is about how I got rid of my stalker because it's a story I've never told you before, and I think it's really relevant to all of us actually. So what happened is, like, when I was 18 years old until I was 21 years old, this guy stalked me. I first met him at a rave. I sat down against a wall and he was up against the wall, and he looked at me and he said, are you not going to say hi? You're really rude. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never seen you before. And he's like, your name is Kirsten Johnson. You lived in this dormitory. These are your friends. This is your hometown. He knew everything about me. And he looked really high. You know, we were at a rave. And I was a little concerned that he knew my life story. And then, you know, this guy, I continued to see him at these raves for all over these years. And sorry, it's a little loud here. Sitting on a big chair. Like a year after he was stalking me, and he was always looking at me weird in the distance, and I felt like the snaps was going off, like he was taking my picture, and later I found out he was taking my picture. This is before digital cameras. This was in the 90s. About a year afterwards, I was walking down the hallway at work. I worked at the Sharper Image in marketing for 7 years actually, but I had worked there already 2 years. And he's walking down the hallway, and he got a job in the mailroom at the company that I worked at. And that's kind of when things went from creepy to fucked, because this guy was outside my house. He didn't have a car. He lived in the Sunset District. I lived on Divisadero in San Francisco, so he was like a half an hour driving distance away, but he was constantly outside my house. He would leave packages on my doorstep. Long story short, I tried to ignore him. I silently suffered. I didn't know I could tell my work about him. I was anxious. It was an energy drain, and I felt like I had a hard time sleeping. I would like drink alcohol to cope at night because I was anxious in my bed. I felt like he was outside on my fire escape. And so the reason why I'm telling you all of this is, how did it stop? How did I stop going through this whole situation? It stopped. What ultimately happened is I got to the breaking point, which is what happens with most of us, right? At a certain point, we're like, enough is a frickin' enough. And I saw him at a rave, and I knew he was really shy, and I felt like if I publicly shamed him, I mean, this is my best thinking at 22 years old, but I publicly shamed him. I ran up to him at the rave, and I don't know what happened. I think it's like when one of the parents finds like their kid under the car and lifts the car. So that's what all of a sudden I had a strength that I didn't know that I had, and I ran up to him. I had hit the breaking point, and I was like, no more, like enough is a fucking enough. And I ran up to him, I put my hand underneath his throat and lifted him off the ground against a wall. And I told him to leave me the fuck alone. You need to stop, or I'm calling the police, and like this whole thing, right? And so until I found my power, I was stalked. I was a victim of my stalker until I hit the breaking point of enough is enough. And the reason why I'm sharing this story with you today is because we all have a stalker. It's called fear. We are all being stalked by fear in our life. We are all ignoring it. We are all silently suffering. We are all anxious. We are all getting an energy drain. So maybe you don't have a physical stalker like I did when I was a teenager, but we all are being stalked by fear until the day where you can reach into yourself, hold your fear up against the wall, and say enough is a fuck enough. Face your fear and decide to do what action you want to do anyway. And so, take a look at your life right now. This is what I want to invite you. And you know what is interesting? I didn't know I was going to bring up this guy. I was actually stalked again right when I got sober. When I was newly sober, this guy in the recovery scene was stalking me a year and a half. So my first stalker was 3 years. So the second one being only a year and a half was growth, right? And what made him stop ultimately is the day that I was in a public place, again, the public shaming, which I don't recommend public shaming, but I had hit that breaking point where enough is a fucking enough, and I said at the top of my voice in front of a lot of people, if you don't stop doing what you're doing, if you don't stop harassing me, I'm gonna call the fucking cops. If you can't stop yourself, the police are gonna stop you. And the reason why I'm bringing this to you is because I want to invite you, again, to look at fear, look at where you are being stalked by fear, where you are not stepping up into the life that you want to live, where you can call enough is enough. You don't have to wait to the breaking point where you need to publicly shame yourself, right? Or like I did with the stalkers. Today can be your day to wake up. We don't have, our bottom is when we stop digging. Today can be the day. Today can be the day that you change. We don't have to wait till it gets that bad. Usually we do, because pain is a fucking motivator, right? But right now, me on this big chair, this is so funny. This could be your breaking point. And so my bottom line is this: we get what we tolerate. What are you tolerating? Enough is